please welcome to the stage your moderator, Summer Flynn from the Dolls of Horror podcast.
Woo! Happy Sunday! Who feels like they're dying right now? Woo! Yes, same, but we better put that energy up because we have to welcome Mr. Bill Moseley to the stage. Let's make extra loud noise, okay? Come on, more. Yes. Welcome. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Okay, guys, so who has been to Bill's table and got themselves a head plate? Anyone? No? Well, you need to get on it because it's great. Who's been to Bill's table and got themselves some Tutti Fucking Fruity? No one? What's wrong with you guys? Get over there. Come on now.
That's expensive ice cream.
How has the show been for you, sir?
Always good. Always fun to be back in Atlanta. Love this show. And love you guys. Even the yawning ones.
Sunday, you can't hold that against us.
That's okay. Because I am happy to be here. Happy to talk about my work. Always cool to be next to Phil Anselmo. Any of you metal fans? Because Phil and I don't know if you all know this, but Phil and I have an EP out called Bill and Phil, Songs of Darkness and Despair, that we did a couple years ago, where I went down to Phil's place in Louisiana, in the woods of Louisiana, and we banged out 6 songs on a little CD. It's really cool.
That's very exciting. And you have other CDs as well?
I do, actually. I have,
right?
I've always, as Chop Top would say, music is my life.
Woo!
And so I've always been musically inclined. When I was in 4th grade, I picked up the trombone, but it was just too much trouble. So then I moved up, and I was a little boy filled with air. So then I moved up to the tuba in the school band, and I had so much air, I had more air than the tuba, so they put me on the sousaphone.
What's that?
Sousaphone is the thing that wraps around you with a big bit.
Oh, yeah.
The tuba is actually, it's outside of your body that, the sousaphone wraps around you. And
I don't know what that was called.
Yeah. From John Philip Sousa, the guy that wrote all those marches. And so that's what I played. I was so good, they put me in the all-district band as first sousaphone. And I had no idea what I was doing. I couldn't read music. There was a bunch of little dots on the page. I just would go, and everybody thought it was beautiful. But the problem was, of course, carrying it home on the bus. Yeah, so.
Yeah, for sure. And in the Illinois winter?
In the Illinois winter. And then, what I did was I actually moved away from brass to bongos. So that's what I played today, bongos.
And it had to start somewhere.
Yes.
Started with that. All right.
And I had a band with my brothers, the Moseley Brothers Band. And from there, when I moved to Los Angeles, I ended up meeting a very strange guy named Buckethead. And Buckethead and I, along with his drummer from a band called the Deli Creeps, a guy named Pinchface. And Pinchface, Buckethead, and I formed a band called Cornbugs. And so we put out like a bunch of albums. And then after Cornbugs, I met up with a guy named Ronnie Sharon, whose twin brother is the drummer for Marilyn Manson, Neil Sharon. And Ronnie has a band called Stolen Babies. And Ronnie and I got together and have a band called Spider Mountain. Now there will be a quiz on this, so I think we're taking notes on this. And we put out an album about 7 years ago called No Way Down. And we have a new album coming out in about probably less than a month called The Devil Rides West. You'd like that. Yeah. So, and it's really cool. It's actually, it's a good album, so.
Would you say music was your first passion?
Yeah, I had to say acting probably, artistically, yeah. Yep.
So you've had so many extraordinary roles. What would you say that you are most recognized for?
You know, it's pretty much 50-50 between Otis and Chop Top.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I've done a lot more work as Otis. Chop Top was kind of one and done. But you know, people love Chop Top, and every time there's a new Chainsaw movie out, like one that just came out last week, you know, there's always, you know, everybody revisits the Texas Chainsaw franchise, or whatever you call it. And so there's always new love for Chop Top.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm only sorry that actually that they, you know, nobody ever decided to do a second movie with Chop Top.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That should have been the real part 3.
Yeah.
Continue Chop Top story. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because, you know, I end up, because Chop Top's never really that far away from me. I mean, I'm always like, you know, when I'm at, you know, let's say in line, TSA line or something, you know, when they come up to me, I always go, "Dog will hunt! Get that bitch, Leatherface!" And, you know, I get called off in shackles, but you know, sometimes you just can't help it. It just comes out.
Has anyone ever just, when you do that, just turned around and just loved it because they were a fan?
Yep.
Yeah.
Not at the airport, though.
Oh. I would have been like, wait, what?
Yeah, right.
But like,
Or on the airplane, you know.
oh, don't do it on the airplane.
Right.
No, before security.
No, they don't like that.
Oh, they're like, Bill?
You know, it's funny because the last time I flew home I live in Los Angeles. The last time I flew home from Atlanta, I actually was in Myrtle Beach last year, and Myrtle Beach to Atlanta, and then I was moving on to Los Angeles. And I was on the Atlanta-LA flight, and this announcement comes over the loudspeaker from the captain. We'll be diverting, and we will be landing in Dallas. And it's like, I wonder why. I hope it's not because they ran out of gas or the wing fell off. It turns out it was an unruly passenger. And somebody wasn't wearing a mask or arguing or just going crazy. And so, you know, we ended up landing in Dallas and, you know, got to the gate, and a couple of big fucking police guys. I mean, I thought they were like, you know, Dallas Cowboys. I mean, these were some big guys. They came on and removed the unruly passenger. But I had never had that happen before. It's pretty, you know, it's kind of exciting.
And you're like, oh, Texas. Right? It's like, oh,
well, I like my
good old
Texas. They weren't, you know, up there arguing, you know, circling around. I was like, fuck you, you're off the plane, pal. So,
seriously.
yeah.
No, we got places to go. Get off.
Well, it was funny because I took a selfie, you know, kind of like holding up, because I was on the aisle, and so I was kind of looking back at the cops and the unruly passenger. So I took this selfie and I put it on my Instagram account. And the next thing I know, it was picked up by CNN. And there's a picture on CNN.com of, you know, and it has Bill Moseley, actor, you know, like underneath my chest there. And so it's my picture, and they're, you know, unruly passenger. And it became fucking news, which is just, you know.
Helping them out now.
I hope the flight today is a little less exciting. One's good, 2 is way too many.
Right. So you've got to be a part of so many interesting special effects, both wearing makeup and killing.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite effect?
Favorite effect? You know, it goes back because I don't know if you guys know this, but if you look at your schedule, the next speaker is going to be Tom Savini, King of Splatter. Mm-hmm. And I met Tom on the set of Texas Chainsaw 2 back in 1986 in Austin, Texas. And so I would have to say all of the effects. I'll tell you a funny story. There was, you know, because Tom and his henchmen made all the, you know, certainly the makeup and a lot of the props. And there's a scene in the radio station in Texas Chainsaw 2 where I'm, you know, beating the brains out of poor Lou Perryman, LG. And I'm just, you know, going down now. If I had a hammer, you know, just banging away on poor LG. And it was very funny because LG, Lou is lying there. It's a very hot set because that was back in the days of lights and, film in the camera and, very close and summer in
Texas.
And Tom Savini is actually right off the frame. He's madly pumping blood, which goes through a tube and comes up the back of Lou Perryman through his hair and stops right at the top of his forehead. So this blood is spraying and I'm banging away. And we did a couple of takes of it, and Toby kept saying, cut. And I'd say, what did I do? What did I do wrong? And I'd look, and the hammer was actually bent like a pretzel, because the hammer was made out of foam rubber and just had like a coat hanger wire in the middle of it. So it looked like a hammer. It was painted like a hammer, but it was just made of rubber. So every time I would get kind of carried away, and this thing would bend, so we had to do many takes. And finally, I think we did like take number 12. It's really hot. Each time Lou has to get cleaned up, Tom Savini has to reload blood in his little blood pump. And finally we did one that was actually good. I was trying to hold the hammer in a way that wasn't going to bend it like a pretzel. And so we did take number 12, and Toby Hooper goes, okay, cut. And he goes, yeah, that was great. Let's just do one more. And I'm like, kind of exasperated. I said, well, Tobe, am I doing something wrong here? And he goes, hell no, Bill, I'm just having fun watching you. And when you have a director that says that, that's gold. So that fired me up. So
You're like, okay.
Yeah, all right.
Let's do it.
Sorry, Lou. Lou wasn't happy about that either. But.
How was working with Lou?
Lou was great. He's a great guy, very fun guy. It was funny because Lou was, I think he was on furlough from jail. I don't know, for some reason he'd been put in jail. And, but for some reason, he was serving time in jail, but because he was in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they put in some petition. And so Lou was kind of out on furlough, just long enough to make the Texas Chainsaw 2, and then I guess they shipped him back to jail.
Well, that was awfully nice of them to let him do that.
A work release program.
Right. They could have been like, nah. Well,
Yeah, if you're in a chainsaw movie, they'll let him out, in a couple of weeks.
well, obviously he wasn't in jail for violent crime.
Well,
Or they wouldn't
wait a
have-
minute, I don't
maybe.
know. But of course, if he was, he did get his face peeled off and everything. So
Yes.
I'd say that's a fitting punishment for whatever he did. But
I think that's my favorite kill in the whole movie.
yeah,
Or my favorite effect even
Yeah.
too. It's so fun and memorable with you just wailing away.
well, also Lou. Lou had the peel. Leatherface peels Lou. I'm sorry if it's a spoiler for some of you, but the movie was in 1986. So come on, guys.
If you haven't seen it now, that's not our fault.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
But Lou had, Leatherface cuts a little, has a little funny electric carving knife instead of a chainsaw. And he's carving off pieces of Lou, I think off his leg and his chest, and certainly peels off his face.
That reveal of him.
Yeah. Well, Lou was in the House of Pain. That's what I called Savini's makeup shop. I think that was about a 7-hour makeup because they had to shave his legs and then glue a bunch of rubber on him that looked like peeled. Then they had to cover him with blood and do his face. So Lou really, Lou worked hard at that, just trying to, have a cigarette. And he was lying on they had a plank, kind of a diagonal plank. So Lou just lay there as they kind of glued him up and bloodied him up. But in the scene, Stretch discovers Lou, and there is a moment where she goes, LG, they got you too? And he goes, don't be scared, darling. And in the Spider Mountain album, there's a song where we use that, it's like a tribute to LG. In fact, the first Spider Mountain album is dedicated to Lou Perryman, so.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Lou who was killed by somebody. Apparently there was some guy who, I don't know, got out of jail or got out of the hospital and wasn't on his meds or off his meds or whatever it was. and knocked on Lou's door in Texas, in Austin, and killed Lou. Lou opened the door, and I don't know if he was trying to help the guy or whatever, but the guy like stabbed him or did something. It was really weird because I got that. Somebody called me, I can't remember who it was that called me up, and told me what had happened, and I was then tasked with calling Toby, and because Toby was a great friend of Lou's, and letting Toby know that. And it was kind of weird because there was that moment, kind of out-of-body moment, where I'm telling Toby Hooper that Lou was murdered, and it was brutal. And then there was this little part of me going, and just thinking that, both Toby and I were also kind of seeing it cinematically, and we were, we're like chainsaw people, so kind of like, that was just kind of a weird moment there. But Lou was also in Poltergeist. Yeah. And if you remember Poltergeist, there are a bunch of workmen that are, working outside the house, and Lou is one of them. So, Toby used Lou a lot. Lou was a great guy, a great daughter. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but
well, I'm gonna,
R.I.P. LG.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna go off. That's tragic. Man, what a way.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna go on a little bit unrelated tangent here.
Thank you.
Poltergeist was one of the first movies that traumatized me effects-wise. I've been watching horror films since I was 8 years old, and I was just consuming all horror all the time, and nothing fazed me. It was great. I think I was maybe 11. I saw Poltergeist, and when the guy starts ripping off his face,
right.
And I'm like, I got nauseous, and I was like, oh, and I had to turn it off, and that shit's rated PG. As an adult, I'm like, what the fuck? That scene is one of probably three scenes in a horror film ever that has ever affected me and made me turn it off for a minute, ever. And that's one of them, and that was the first one I remembered. And my mom's like, I told you you couldn't watch that, but I was watching all the others, Texas Chainsaw, and Grace, and I was like, yeah! But that freaked me out. And it's like, my mom's like, freak. Like, what's wrong with you? I've seen what you watch. What's wrong with you? But yeah, man, speaking of effects, Poltergeist.
Well, it's funny how parents sometimes do go, don't worry, Johnny, it's all fake. And I remember on the set of Chainsaw 2, I was, certainly dressed as Chop Top. I had already been working, so I was kind of gritty and dirty and sweaty. Chop Top, it really is at his most scary. And a very well-heeled woman and her little boy were on the set. And I remember the little boy looked at me and kind of hid behind his mother's skirts. And his mother, kind of pulled him around and said, don't worry, it's just an actor in costume. And she walked him over to me. And I remember leaning down and going to the little boy. I went, don't believe it. Yeah.
It's also really funny for me, 8 years old, I was hardcore, right? But before that, I was terrified of the Halloween aisle in like the drugstore. And like Woolworths with all the masks and stuff, and I would refuse to go anywhere near it. My mom's like, you would just cry and cry and cry from terror if we even got near it. And I'm like, yeah, I was a little bitch, But I got over that real quick. But yeah, before that, I was a baby. I'm like, wow, I was a wuss.
Yeah. I think you knew.
Yes, I was just trying to conquer the fear.
Yeah.
And then I was like, it's kind of fun.
It's funny about Poltergeist because during just when they were working on Poltergeist together, it was Toby and Steven Spielberg. And the way I got my job as Chop Top was that I had done a short film, like 5-minute film called The Texas Chainsaw Manicure. I wrote it, produced it, and gave myself a little cameo as the hitchhiker. And I showed it to a friend of mine who was actually a successful screenwriter in Hollywood at the time. It was probably 1984. And my friend said, give me a copy, because I'm right across the hall from Toby Hooper at, I guess it was Paramount Pictures. And so I said, okay, why not? So I gave him a copy of The Manicurist on VHS. Some of you might not know what that is, but it's on tape back then. And my
So
friend.
it's on VHS and not Betamax.
Yes, exactly. Well, my friend walked it across the hall to Toby. Toby watched it. I found this out later. Toby watched it, and then Toby called in his producing partner, Steven Spielberg, and the two of them watched it, really liked it. And on the basis of my 20-second cameo as a hitchhiker, that's how I got hired to play Chop Top. 2 years later. Because my friend also gave me Toby's home number, which was, very cool, and told me to give Toby a call like a week after I had given him the tape. And so I did. I got back to New York where I was living, and I called up Toby, and I found a miracle happened that I didn't realize was a miracle until later. Toby answered his own phone at home, and he goes, "Hello?" I go, "Yes, hi, Toby. Yes, it's me, Bill Moseley." He goes, "Who?" And I said, "I'm the guy that did the manicure." And he goes, "Oh, yeah, hey, I love the manicure, Bill." And I said, "Oh, good, well, I'm glad to hear that." And he goes, "Yeah, now who played the hitchhiker?" And I said, "Well, that was me." And he said, "Well, if I ever do a sequel, I'll keep you in mind." And I said, "Oh, great, all right." And never heard from him again after that. I think I sent him a postcard. Never heard from him for 2 years. And then, early 1986, on a random night in New York, the phone rings. I could tell it was long distance. Back then, you could hear kind of a sizzle to a long distance call.
Static almost.
And it was this guy saying his name was Kit Carson. And I knew who that was from the gossip columns because I think he was married to Karen Black at the time. So he was in like page 6 of the New York Post or whatever. So I knew who that was. And he was a screenwriter, like shaggy, blonde-haired guy, nice guy. But anyway, he was calling up and said, "Is this Bill Moseley? I want to send you a copy of Chainsaw 2, a copy of the script." And there was a big part of me that wanted to say, "No, fuck you, who is this really?" Because it was like, it felt like I was being pranked. And anyway, but because of the sizzle, I knew it was long distance, so I gave this guy my address. And this was before the internet, so a couple of days later, the script appeared in a manila envelope in my mailbox. And I was told to read it and to definitely to focus on Chop Top. And I think maybe in the first script it was called Platehead, but because I think there was a conflict with Masters of the Universe characters or something, that they changed it to Chop Top. So I looked at it, I read the script, I thought it was hilarious. Chop Top was a big part. And I called Kit back and I said, "Hey man, I read the script, it's great, I love it, it's funny." He goes, "Really, you like it?" And I went, "Yeah, I like it a lot." And he said, "Well, we'll be in touch." And a couple days later, I got a call from the Canon Films legal department saying, "Do you have an agent or do you want to negotiate your own contract?" And I said, "Well, let me get back to you." And I did not have an agent. I was a writer, freelance writer in New York. But I had met one at a Christmas party a month earlier. So I called her up. She was at William Morris. And I said, "Would you negotiate a contract for me?" She said, "Sure," because for an agent, it's kind of free money. And so she did. And that's when she called me back and said, "Well, they want you to play this character, Chop Top, in Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. And I was like, "Wow, that's awesome." She said, "Well, that's the good news, and then there is some bad news." I said, "Well, what's the bad news?" She said, "Well, they're only going to pay you scale." And, and I was thinking, geez, I'm thinking like scale, like on a fish, scale, what is that? And so she said, "Oh, I think it's like $1,700 a week." And I was thinking, well, shit, I make like $200 a week. That sounds pretty good to me. That's not bad news. And she said, "Yes, well, okay, well, but there's more bad news." I said, "Well, what's that?" She said, "Well..."
That bad news actually wasn't that bad right now.
Yeah. And I said, "Well," she said, "Well, it's a makeup and there's a plate in your head and everything, so they want you to shave your head." And I went, "Okay." She said, "Oh, well, I told them you were a working actor and that, they'd have to compensate you until your hair grew back. So they've agreed to pay you $5,000 to shave your head. I was thinking,
Extra.
that's the bad news, and that's how the job done.
Do we have any audience questions? All right. Yes. It's you. Yes.
I was wondering if you could talk about Silent Night, Deadly Night a little bit.
Oh, yes.
My favorites.
Deadly Night.
Silent Night, Deadly Night 3.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Monty Hellman was the director of Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, the great American auteur. He was going to, try his hand in a horror movie. And for some reason, he just looked at me and said, you're my Ricky. So, that's, sometimes
Really?
it's good, to get a job. It's, when the director's eyes light up because you're the guy that he's thinking of to play like the Santa Claus killer. It's like, well, what about my faces?
You're like, do I have to say garbage day?
Right. I didn't have to say anything.
Exactly.
Silent role. And it was great working with Monty Hellman. I will tell you a story about that. As early in my acting career, the one thing I was really scared of was having to cry. I really thought that because I was raised by a Marine, raised by wolves in Illinois, that's the one thing I certainly wasn't, gonna be, soft and cry. To me that was like terrifying. And anyway, so there was a scene where I have now been invited, even with my brain cap, with like a rubber brain, and I had some orange juice swirling in it, and there were little lights blinking on this half dome, looked like a salad bowl on my head. I'm wearing a nightgown and paper slippers.
It looked like one of those hair dryers.
Yeah,
Right?
And so there was a scene where a kindly old lady has invited me in. It's Christmas Eve, she's feeling that Christmas spirit. Beautiful, old, wonderful actress, nice old lady. She invites me in, she invites Ricky, the Santa Claus killer, in, thinking he's a homeless guy. And she sits him at the dinner table, and she goes into the kitchen and comes back in and comes back out with a bowl of turkey soup. And so my job, the scene is, I've got this kind of, stocking caps kind of stuck onto this brain cap. It's just really about as absurd as you can get. And I'm sitting there like this kind of zombie guy, and the smiling old lady comes in with a bowl of turkey stew. And I made an actor's choice. I'm left-handed, so I thought it would be kind of more awkward if I, ate the soup with my right hand. So I had a spoon in my right hand, and I'm just about to put the soup to my lips, and I look up, and here's this old lady, the one that's invited me in. She's smiling at me, and in that moment, for some reason, the tears started pouring out of my eyes. I really don't. It was just so. It was peaceful. She was so loving. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, I'm about to have that turkey soup, and tears start rolling down my cheeks. And I remember, putting the spoon back down into the bowl, and I remember Monty Hellman, the director, going, "And cut." This whisper, and so he to save the moment, and they cut, and the crew started to applaud.
Wow.
And I just remember just thinking with this blinking brain cap and tears coming down my face. I had scars and all kinds of shit. And I just thought, this is fucking weird. But I've been able to cry ever since then. So that was my, thank you for reminding me of that.
I saw another one over here somewhere. Yes, Devil.
You've worked with some really big names, Sheldon Cooper, Dennis Hopper, Karen Black. Has there ever been a moment where you've been starstruck?
Yeah, so I did a movie called Pink Cadillac with Clint Eastwood, and there was absolutely a moment. Clint. It was funny because Clint never auditioned people in person because a lot of times they would get so overwhelmed. It's Clint Eastwood, And so Clint usually hired, his casting people hired by tape. And tape back then wasn't self-tape, it was, tape of movies you'd done before. And so I got hired as Daryl, one of the white supremacist gang, by Clint because of Chop Top. They had they had gotten the footage of the chainsaw of Chop Top and Chainsaw 2. So anyways, I was on the set with Clint, and it was my birthday, I remember. This was probably 1988, 89, and there's a scene where I'm guarding, I think Bernadette Peters or something in some little cabin in the woods, and Clint has kind of got some funny persona, and he's coming up, and we've met before apparently at a bar, and so Clint comes up and goes, "Hey Daryl, how's it going?" I go, "Oh, it's good," and we're having our little chat, and then there's some noise from the cabin, and I'm supposed to turn. As I turn, Clint's supposed to hit me on the head with the butt of his pistol, knock me out. So I'm sitting there, and I remember thinking that I was almost like it was like I was inside my head, like looking out the windows of my eyes. I was very objective, and I was going, "Holy fuck, that's Clint fucking Eastwood." Looking at Clint, going, trying to be in the scene, but it's like, fuck. And so the director was a guy who was Clint's old stunt guy named Buddy Van Horn. And so I hear action. And so I'm talking to Clint, we're having our little talk, and then I hear the noise, and I hear the noise, and I literally jump as Clint's trying to hit me on the head with the butt of his pistol. And I moved so quickly, he missed me. And Buddy goes, "Cut." He goes, "Bill, it's a rubber gun. I mean, it's not gonna hurt. So you gotta just, turn. You don't have to jump out of the way." And I remember turning around and saying, "Yeah, but I've seen too many Clint Eastwood movies." Clint got a kick out of it. So anyway.
Anyone else? You, right there. Yes, you.
Big House of a Thousand Corpses fan.
Yeah.
What was your favorite part of working on that movie?
Well, getting the job. Honestly, I like all of that stuff. I mean, I love doing that. We did. Actually, one of my favorite moments was when we were shooting House of a Thousand Corpses on the back lot of Universal Studios in Burbank, California, and I just remember the House of a Thousand Corpses was actually the chicken house, the chicken ranch, and best little whorehouse in Texas. So we repurposed it to House of a Thousand Corpses. So no more singing Dolly Parton. Now it's Otis and everybody else. So at one point I come out, I'm wearing Mr. Willis's skin. I got the chest, I got the face, the skin of his arms. I'm covered with blood, and they say cut. And so I go outside of the house and stand on the porch just as a tram ride of tourists is coming on a Universal tour, and you hear this guy going, "And on your right, you see the Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses being shot." And I remember just covered with blood and other people's skin, just kind of waving as the tram goes by. They're like, "Oh fuck." So anyway, that was probably my favorite role.
All right, Creature Cosmetics.
What would have to happen for us to get All-American Massacre?
You would have to talk to Toby's son. I don't really know. That is.
The world
I know
needs it.
a lot of people have thought about that and talked about that over the years, but I really can't help you. I wish I could.
Right.
But thanks.
Right there, right to the back. Yeah, yes.
What was it like to do your cameo in Night of the Living Dead for Tom Savini?
Well, it wasn't a cameo, but it was funny because Tom, of course, I knew from Texas Chainsaw 2, and I remember he sent me the script when he got the job as director, because he worked with George Romero so much, and George gave him his shot, and Tom sent me a copy of the script and said, "Read the script and pick any character you want." And I said, "Great." So I read it. And of course, I'm thinking, I'm going to pick the character that has the most scenes, because that's the most time on set, meaning the most money I'm going to make. I wish it were more artistic than that, but it was funny. And so I wanted to play Harry, the bad guy in the basement that ultimately was played by Tommy Tolles. And so I called Tom up. I said, I love the script, it's great. I want to play Harry, the guy in the basement. And Tom said, pick any character, just make sure it's Johnny. I was like, oh. So I went. I knew that it was a short-lived character, but I did know that he got to utter one of the famous lines in horror. "They're coming to get you, Barbara." And
Did
so,
you open the movie? It's very important.
very important. So I ended up, there was a Boris Karloff movie called Die Monster Die. I don't know if y'all know that. But that's what I used. That was, again, back in the days of tape. So I rented Die Monster Die and kept playing it over and over again to get Boris Karloff's accent. So that's where I got that. And then there was a long scene where Barbara and I have a long walk from the car to our mother's gravestone. So I said, and I say, "They're coming to get you, Barbara," right at the beginning of the walk. So as we're moving through the graveyard, there was kind of a silence. So I added, "They're horny, Barbara. They've been dead a long time." And George Romero liked that, so it stayed in the movie.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir.
Being many horror franchises are doing sequels where they ignore certain sequels to certain events, are there any characters that you've been in a movie where you passed that you wish you could bring back in some form or another in a sequel?
Well, certainly Chop Top. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, and it's so funny because everybody, I think Jeff Burr directed Chainsaw 3, and the whole idea, and David Chow wrote the screenplay, and it was all about, everybody really treated Chainsaw 2 like it was just like, like Toby was drunk and, made this crazy, movie that had nothing to do with, the original gritty horror of Texas Chainsaw. And so everybody has kind of avoided anything to do with, with Chainsaw 2, and therefore with Chop Top. So I would say Chop Top is certainly a character I would love to see brought back. It was funny because when I got the call for Chainsaw 3D in 2013, I guess it was, and I remember getting a call from the producer, Carl Mazzacone, and he said, "We want you to be in Chainsaw 3D." I guess it never was 3D, but that's what it used to be called. And I said, "Great." He goes, "Yeah, we want you to play the cook." And I'm thinking, like, what? I mean, that's like asking Curly to come back and play Mo. It's like, what? Wait a minute, me? I'm Chop Top. I said, "What about Chop Top?" He said, "Well, we don't have the rights to Chop Top." So for that movie, they had gotten the rights to the original, but Chainsaw 2 is owned by Sony Pictures, and therefore it's a whole different rights thing. And anyway, that was a funny story because I was going to play Jim Seadow's part, which I thought was great because I love Jim. Him and his wife, we used to send Christmas cards, and we're buddies. And so I was happy to play, and I wanted to play Jim because I wanted to make sure that nobody else fucked it up. And I remember the producer saying, "Well, yes, we're going to have to get you a fat suit." I said, "Well, why?" He goes, "Well, for the cook." I said, "Well, the cook, Jim Seadow, he was a gaunt man. He wasn't fat." He said, "No, I want you to go ahead and we're going to get you a fat suit." And I was about to argue, and then I just thought, I'm getting paid for this. And so this voice in my head, which has told me this a bunch of times, which was, "Shut up, Bill." So I was like, "Okay, yeah, let's get that fat suit." It was so funny because when we were about to shoot that movie, the director called me up, and I'd never met him before, but he called up. It was a courtesy call to welcome me to the cast. And he said, "So, how does it feel to be playing the father?" And I said, "Well, the cook actually is the older brother." He goes, "No, it's the father." And I was like, "Shut up, Bill. Shut up." He said, "Feels good. Feels real good." So, because, the cook is not the father, by the way. There are no parents. So.
How was it to film that scene in like a recreation of the original house? The set was beautiful.
It's wonderful. It's really great. I at one point was, I guess I'd been shot or something, and I'm supposed to be lying at the foot of the stairs in the chainsaw house. And, people, and I'm lying there, I'm covered with blood, chicken feathers. We're shooting, actually it wasn't the Texas chainsaw, it was the Louisiana chainsaw massacre, because we're in Bossier City, Louisiana, on some kind of a army reserve or something where they built a replica of the chainsaw house. But I'm lying there at the foot of the stairs, covered with blood and chicken feathers. I'm not moving, so like people are dragging cables and they're pushing cameras and lights. And I just remember just lying there, looking up the stairs. Now down, if you look straight ahead, there's the sliding steel door that's open with the red velvet and all the skulls. Looking up the stairs where Grandma and Grandpa and the little stuffed dog are up there. And I'm just really thinking, having that, that moment. So I had a moment of like, wow, I'm home, and it's cool. Really like that.
Yeah. I love watching it. I love a good callback, first of all.
Yeah.
Right?
Heck yeah.
And it looked so authentic.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I've been to the one in Bastrop. It's the real house that they, I guess, put on a truck and moved to Bastrop, Texas.
Yeah, it's a bed and breakfast.
Bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if I think it's still open.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what survived after COVID,
Right.
but I think it's still up and
Exactly.
running. Okay, more questions. Yes.
Can I get you to talk like Chop Talk again when he was in the radio station and he wanted Leatherface to go after the girl?
Get that bitch, Leatherface! Get that bitch!
Yes.
Tom Wilson. That'll be $20.
Can you touch on what it's like to be a dad act in Army of Darkness?
Yes.
Army of Darkness, yeah. I mean, I auditioned for the part. I didn't even know what I was auditioning for, but his friend Sam liked Chainsaw 2, Chop Top again. Chop Top has brought me just about everything good in my acting career, so thank you, Chop Top. But I had auditioned, I think I recited the poem, The Jabberwocky, because I think they wanted an English accent or something, so I was trying to do the Jabberwocky with an English accent. It was brilliant with the sliding toes, the guy would get the way. But I got the job as the new captain of the Army of the Dead. And it was a good gig. They were very cheap, but it was a good gig, and I got to ride a horse. It was a little scary because I had about 15 pounds of rubber from good old KNB. I had a patch over one eye. I had a sclera lens, which is like a contact that covers literally half your eyeball, and it's opaque. It's white. So I had a blind left eye. I had an eye patch over my right eye with like a little pinhole in it, so I could barely see. I was in the saddle of a horse. It was 4 a.m. I was told to take the reins of a second horse that had like a rubber skeleton in the saddle. And my job was to say charge and gallop down a hill through a sea of extras with real torches and real pikes, which are like spears. And we ended up doing that, I think, 3 takes. And in each take, I remember praying that I would stay in the saddle. Please keep me in the saddle. Because, I'm towing a horse. I can't see. I don't know what the hell's going on. And we ended up doing 3 takes of that. And I did survive, obviously. And but after the 3rd take, I remember when we got it, I rode down to Sam. Sam was on some camera crane. He had like a French beret on and like a little megaphone. Like, oh, my fine skeletons. He was doing this whole thing. And I rode up. I was, after surviving the 3 charges. And I said, hey, I act too. That's why I've never worked with him again. So it's like, well, not anymore, man. So anyway, but I enjoy it. I love the movie. I think it's fantastic. So
On our podcast, The Dolls of Horror, one of our segments is prop we would like to own. And we have some very interesting things that we want to own. In Army of Darkness, by the way, we wanted a bone flute.
Yes, that looked good.
Desperately wanted the bone flute.
Right.
But is there any prop from a movie that you really wanted to take, but you couldn't get it?
Yes. It would be my white suit, hat, and red gloves from Prisoners of the Ghostland. I did want that because they had about 20 measurements that they, so they really tailored that white suit. I don't know if y'all have seen that. It just came out like 6 months ago. Prisoners of the Ghostland. And I play the governor. It's a Nicolas Cage movie, shot it in Japan at the end of 2019. And directed by Sion Sono, who's fantastic. I don't know if you guys know that director. Amazing stuff. If you're all horror fans, you want to see something really funky, you could go with Cold Fish. I'd say start there, or Tag. There's a bunch of movies he has done. He's really amazing. He's right up there with Takashi Miike. He's awesome. But anyway. I had this beautiful white suit with a white hat, some red gloves, white shoes, and they did lots of measurements, but I don't know where that suit is now. I wanted that.
Unfortunate. We also, I could double another segment we do is fashion moment. That would be your fashion moment as well, I presume.
Well, no, I would say I would stick with, I do have my Chop Top costume.
Yeah? The original?
Yep.
That's amazing. Now that's amazing.
Well, it was amazing because right at the end, after we wrapped Chainsaw 2, I was getting my civilian clothes on, and I had already taken my costume off, and at the time, our wardrobe person was Karen Hooper, who was married to Toby. And there was a knock on my little honey wagon door, and I opened it up, and there's Karen with a open cardboard box, and it's got my Chop Top costume. And, sneakers, bell-bottom jeans,
And
tie-dyed shirt, the vest, the whole deal. But, and she said, here, this is for you. And this is, again, pre-eBay and all that stuff. And I looked at it and I said, I would never really wear any of this stuff. So I said, no thank you.
shut up, Bill.
And mercifully, the set photographer, Eric Lasher, said, I'll take it. So he ended up taking it. And many years later, he had some kind of, I don't know if he was cleaning his storage space or he had a come to Jesus moment or whatever it was, but he called me up and said, look, I've got the Chop Top costume. Do you want it? And I went, yeah. Yeah.
That was the correct answer the first time.
I can stop doing this. And so I got the Chop Top costume. And the one thing that I also, there were two head plates. One was kind of the pre-head plate, which was before the radio station where I get hit in the head with Leatherface's chainsaw. And so it's a smooth plate. And then there's one, the second plate has some kind of a scoring where you can see where the blade hit the plate. And Tom Savini got one plate. And both of the plates, by the way, were made out of sterling silver. Because it's very thin but very malleable, so they can kind of contour to my head. And the second plate, so Tom has the one, I think the pre-scoring plate. The second plate was kept by Sean McEnroe, who did basically the day in, day out, did the Chop Top makeup. And years after Chainsaw, I got contact, I think I got an email or something from some guy claiming to have that plate. And that he was apparently Sean's neighbor, and that Sean had inhaled so many chemicals from, doing special effects makeup, and his parents were old and dying, and I don't know, for some reason, Sean wanted to get rid of the plate, and had made his neighbor the guy in charge of the sale. And so the neighbor was, contacting me, how much will you give me for the head plate? And I'm just thinking, this was in the era of eBay. And I was thinking, holy shit, how do you I want to make sure that I get the plate, because if he puts it on eBay, the millionaires will outbid me, I'm sure. So I called up my buddy Todd Bates, a special effects makeup guy, and I said, well, how much should I offer this guy for the head plate? And Sean said, I would offer him $1,500. And I'm thinking, that's fucking pricey, man. But then again, I'm thinking, maybe that's a good price. So I offered the guy $1,500. He said, okay, I'll take it. But send me a cashier's check, which of course, you can't really control. You can't stop payment. A cashier's check is just like cash. So, and he wanted it sent up to Seattle. So I had a guy named Frankensus who did the cover art for a couple of Cornbug CDs. And Frankensus lived in Seattle. I'd never met him either. But I contacted him. I said, hey man, would you, be my proxy and I'll send you the check, and then you give it to the guy, meet, and have this, make sure that it's the real plate, this whole kind of cloak and dagger.
Make sure it really is that real plate for $1,500.
Yeah, and so he was totally up for it. It sounded like, James Bond kind of shit. So he met this guy at Starbucks in Seattle, and they exchanged, you got the goods, you got the check. And,
you got the plate?
Frankenstein's guy, was convinced it was the plate, and then he sent it to me, and I do have the plate. It was the real plate, which is great.
Well, that's good.
So I do have that too.
That's amazing. Yeah. All right, we have time for like one or two more.
Jeez.
Okay, Roy.
This is fucking coffee.
Have you ever actually eaten head cheese?
No. I bought some, and I've licked it. But I didn't actually eat it. I licked it. When I was making the chainsaw manicure, my wife gets into the truck at the end of the chainsaw manicure with a beautiful manicure and nice heritage. She goes, look, honey, I got the best manicure ever. I go, hey, that's great, honey. We should celebrate with some head cheese. And I bought a lump of head cheese, and in one of the takes, I licked it, but I didn't eat it.
All right, I did see another one somewhere. Anyone? No? Oh, right there.
Hi.
Is there any person that you haven't worked with or a subject matter that's like a dream job of yours?
I don't know if it's a subject matter. Yes. I wanted to work with Guillermo del Toro. He was going to do one of my favorite H.P. Lovecraft stories called At the Mountains of Madness. And he was going to do that. He had a script. James Cameron was going to produce it. They were going to shoot it in real time. It was set in the 30s in Antarctica. There's some Cthulhu or whatever that guy's name is. And I totally wanted to be a part of that. But then, what was that Aliens movie? What's it called? It's No, it was Aliens, but
Covenant.
Yes, thank you.
Prometheus.
Yes, and apparently Guillermo thought that covered kind of the same material or something, so that never happened. But I would have crawled across broken glass to just be a part of it, So I don't think that's going to happen.
I have one wrap-up question.
Okay.
And we talked about, of course, all the roles that you are most known for and the things that we all love you for. Is there a certain movie or project that you have been a part of that maybe is not so well known that you want to share about, so maybe we can go seek it out? What's your passion project, man?
I've done some dogs. Well, I don't really have a passion project. I mean, I keep writing screenplays, but I don't think they're really makeable. I just finished writing a screenplay about, set in West Virginia coal mines. I do have some stuff. I did a screenplay a long time ago called Burials, which is really cool, about some kids on a foster farm. And anyway. I would have to say no. I just actually did a movie just in November, December, in Pennsylvania with Kane Hodder called Hayride to Hell. So, that would probably be out sometime at the end of spring, early summer. I'm still working. I think I go back to LA. Well, I know I go back to LA today. But I think sometime this coming week, I'm going to be back working with Ice Nine Kills and doing another video or so with them. I also have another movie coming out called Chastise.
Okay.
And I think it's also this coming week. I'm doing a short film for film school in LA called AFI. And it's about a husband and wife whose daughter is coming back from college for the holidays. And, it's 8 pages or whatever. Got a horror element to it. And I read the script and I thought, well, shit. It's kind of a pushy wife. And I thought, well, shit, my wife could play that. So I suggested, my wife, who's a great actor, Lucinda Jenny, who's been in, all kinds of things, Thelma and Louise and Rain Man and all kinds of stuff. So, anyway, so the young director liked the idea of, a real husband and wife playing a husband and wife. And then there's the kid that comes back from college. It's a really nasty girl. He's like very mean to her parents. And, we have a daughter. And so, so I said, well, it's kind of like our daughter. So the three of us are going to do this movie.
That's
sometime
beautiful.
This coming week, called Home for the Holidays.
All right, well, stay tuned for that whenever that comes out. Thank you very much, Bill. Give it up, guys.